On today's episode of Life's Potluck Buffet, I'm going to talk about the most misunderstood poem in English, in America, and probably the English speaking world of all time. And that poem has a lot of bearing on what we talked about yesterday. Remember, yesterday's episode was about the 80-20 rule. 80% of the stuff that happens to us is not our doing, 20% we have control over. That's the Life's Potluck Buffet 80-20 rule. But today we're going to talk about a poem that I bet you have seen a lot in motivational contexts. And it turns out that on a closer inspection, you'll find that the poem doesn't really encourage that kind of thinking. So stick around for today's episode of Life's Potluck Buffet. I'm John Paulus, and I'm about to read a poem. The Road Not Taken by Robert Frost. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both and be one traveler. Long I stood and looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other, just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim because it was grassy and wanted wear, though as for that the passing there had worn them really about the same. And both that morning equally lay in leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I marked the first for another day, yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. In a great article in the Paris Review in September 2015, David Orr shows that Robert Frost's The Road Not Taken is probably the most read poem in America. And he did that by using Google search results at the time. And that was the Google Insights product that, that's what he used to kind of analyze it back then. And the outcome was pretty shocking in terms of the road not taken. The search results were really far and away the largest, really, really by far. I mean, like, it wasn't even close in terms of the search volume of that. The Like a Rolling Stone and Dylan was second in terms of the search terms. Road Not Taken and Frost was, many times more searched than that. Also, the Wasteland and Elliot, those search terms, also not close. But he didn't even include the search term, the road less traveled, and because that is, even though that's not the title of the poem, a lot of people think it is because that last stanza has those prominent lines. And so a lot of people misremember the title of the poem as The Road Less Traveled. And most importantly, Orr shows that the world is reading this poem wrong. And in fact, the title is the most misread poem in America. And it's probably not just America. He has worldwide search results. And in the English-speaking world, The Road Not Taken is regularly misinterpreted as this poem, as he calls it, about triumphal self-assertion, which it isn't about. Let me quote from David Orr's article. The literal meaning of the poem's own lines seems completely at odds with this interpretation. The poem's speaker tells us he, quote, shall be telling at some point in the future of how he took the road less traveled by, yet he's already admitted that the two paths, quote, equally lay in leaves, and, quote, the passing there had worn them really about the same. So the road he will later call less traveled is actually the road equally traveled. The two roads are interchangeable. According to this reading, then, the speaker will be claiming ages and ages hence that his decision made all the difference, only because this is the kind of claim we make when we want to comfort or blame ourselves by assuming that our current position is the product of our own choices, as opposed to what was chosen for us or allotted to us by chance. The poem isn't a salute to can-do individualism. It's a commentary on the self-deception we practice when constructing the story of our own lives. And that interpretation of the road not taken turns on its head the common motivational use of the idea of taking the road less traveled makes all the difference. And the reason that I think this interpretation is really important to think about is because it is in line with that idea from card 17 that I talked about yesterday, that everything that happens to us is only partly our doing. And I think you can see card 17 as really I'm not going to say a midpoint between the common motivational image, meme, road less traveled makes all the difference, treatment and interpretation, and David Orr's excellent interpretation in the Paris Review of 2015, because I think the David Orr interpretation shows the kind of fatalism of the Frost poem that says, doesn't matter which one you take, they're the same roads. We're just fooling ourselves. And that interpretation may go a little bit too far. Yesterday I was talking about the falling into that kind of trap of making everything deterministic, which is not only discouraging, but it doesn't align with reality. We know that we do things, so we know that all of our actions aren't controlled per se. We understand that. We understand that implicitly from empiricism, that we can control our actions. However, the percentage of which we can control our actions is much less than the interpretation that says this poem is all about taking the path less traveled, and that makes all the difference. It's much less than that. So I'm not going to say it's halfway between the common motivational meme, take the road less traveled and it'll make all the difference, and the interpretation of David Orr in the Paris Review. It's 80% closer to the interpretation of David Orr, but it allows for that 20% of the choices that we actually make that make a difference. So, in honor of David Orr and Robert Frost and the road less traveled and all of our decision making, let's have a card from Life's Potluck Buffet. Here we go. Yellow lemons, blue dumplings, magenta noodles, cards tell us some things. All right, here we go. It's card 18. Know what you do unconsciously. Consider what choices you make when you are not thinking, when you are simply compelled to make a choice. Start by thinking of a little thing. For example, if you are playing a game and you have to choose a game piece from a group of different objects, which do you choose and why? And be honest with yourself, talk to someone else about this, and think about how this way of choosing applies to the big decisions you make. Well, what a fitting card for today's topic. And I think that Robert Frost's name might be an aptronym. Why? Because even though The Road Not Taken may be his most famous poem, he thought that his most famous poem was going to be Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening. And his last name is Frost. So think about that, and I'll see you tomorrow. Oh, in the meantime, if you're trying to decide whether to hit that subscribe button or not, I think that should have worked. Did it light up? Then just, it's not going to make a difference one way or the other. But for my sake, just hit the subscribe button. Thanks. I really appreciate it.